Hello dear viewers. Today, we invite you to follow a warm and heartfelt story about Hùng and Hoài, a small family quietly celebrating 1 year of marriage and 3 years together. There are no lavish parties or loud congratulations, only simple moments unfolding inside their rustic wooden garden home, where every corner is filled with love, memories, and a bond patiently nurtured over time. 3 years ago, Hoài stepped into Hùng life carrying a very special baggage. She was a single mother, holding the hand of a little boy named Tony, bringing with her old wounds, lingering worries, and a heart that had learned to be strong in order to protect her child. Hùng arrived quietly, without haste or grand gestures. He stayed, patient enough to listen, compassionate enough to understand, and sincere enough to slowly become a pillar of support for both mother and son. Together, they endured days of hardship, exhausted evenings, and moments when it felt impossible to move forward. And then, almost without noticing, love began to grow, quietly yet steadfastly. They fell in love, got married, and built a small home where Tony's laughter blended with the simple peace of everyday life. That afternoon settled gently. The sunlight was no longer harsh, leaving only soft golden streaks stretching along the path leading to the wooden garden house nestled within a calm green space. Hoài pushed a small cart filled with vegetables she had just sold at the afternoon market, walking slowly back home. The wheels rolled steadily along the familiar road, much like the steady rhythm of the life she had lived for so many years. On her shoulders lingered the scent of sun, soil, sweat, and the familiar worries of a woman who had endured countless struggles. Her figure was not fragile or weak, but carried the firmness of someone accustomed to bearing responsibilities and handling everything on her own. The wooden gate came into view. Hoài reached out and gently pushed it open, the familiar creaking sound echoing softly. But at that very moment, she stopped short. The yard looked unusually clean. There were no dry leaves scattered as on ordinary days. The baskets of vegetables were neatly arranged in one corner, tidy and well organized. Under the porch, the lights were already on. Warm yellow lights spilled across the small yard, softly illuminating the wooden steps, making the entire space feel calmer and more peaceful than usual. Hoài stood still for a few seconds. She did not step forward right away, only looking around as her eyes slowly traced over each familiar yet unfamiliar detail. Her heart sank slightly, a feeling difficult to name spreading through her chest. It was not worry, nor quite joy, but a very real sense of surprise, as if she had just stepped into a moment that felt different from any other day. Hoài was stunned. Inside the house, Hùng stood quietly in front of the familiar wooden table. He adjusted the tablecloth once again, even though everything was already perfectly in place. His movements were slow and careful, as if even the slightest misalignment might ruin the warmth he was trying so hard to preserve. The yellow light above cast a soft glow over his calm face, yet it could not completely hide the subtle nervousness in his eyes. On the table were simple dishes. Nothing luxurious, no elaborate presentation. Just a light soup, a familiar plate of stir-fried vegetables, and a gently seasoned braised dish, all the foods Hoài loved, the meals she often cooked after long, tiring afternoons at the market. Hùng remembered clearly. He remembered how she always served Tony first before eating herself. He remembered how she would say, "Simple food is enough," yet her eyes would still light up with quiet happiness when the meal felt complete. Beside him, Tony sat on a low wooden chair. His tiny hands rested on the edge of the table, fingers gripping tightly as if afraid that letting go might cause him to miss something important. The boy could not speak yet, he simply watched in silence. Tony's eyes moved from Hùng to the doorway, where the light spilled in softly. In those clear, innocent eyes was a pure kind of waiting, no impatience, no restlessness, just a quiet belief that the person he longed for would soon appear. From time to time, Tony gently tapped both hands on the tabletop. The soft tapping sound echoed faintly, not loud enough to disturb the stillness, yet enough to fill the room with a very special feeling. It was the simple joy of a child who could not express himself with words, using small gestures to show what his heart felt. Hung bent down, placing one hand gently on Tony's back. His hand was large and warm, moving slowly and patiently. He did not say much, only leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Wait for Mom just a little longer, okay?" The words were simple, spoken lightly, yet filled with the tenderness Hung held for both mother and child. Tony looked up at him. His eyes curved softly, his lips parting into a small, innocent smile. It was not a complete smile, not accompanied by sound, but it was enough to soften an adult's heart, as if all the day's fatigue melted away in that single moment. Just then, the familiar sound of footsteps echoed from the porch. The door opened. Hoài stepped inside. She froze. Her eyes quickly swept across the room, stopping at the wooden table, at the dishes still warm with rising steam, and then settling on the sight of Hung standing there and Tony sitting quietly beside him. Everything seemed to slow down for a few brief seconds. Hoài could not speak right away. Her throat tightened as an unfamiliar feeling spread through her chest. "What are you doing?" Her voice trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from surprise. Hung turned around. A gentle, warm smile appeared on his face, needing no long explanation. He looked at Hoài for a long moment, as if that alone was enough. "Today, you don't need to cook anything. This afternoon, let me take care of it." The words were light, but to Hoài they carried a heavy weight of emotion. She stood still, one hand still resting on the handle of the cart, not yet letting go. Her eyes slowly moved around the room once more, then settled on Tony. The moment he saw his mother, Tony changed completely. He immediately leaned toward her, lifting both hands, his tiny fingers waving softly in the air. He could not say a word, could not call out, "Mom," but his eyes and gestures said everything. It was a joy so real and so pure that no sound was needed for it to be understood. Hoài stepped forward and bent down, lifting Tony into her arms. His small body pressed against her chest, familiar and warm. Tony stirred slightly, resting his head on her shoulder, his arms instinctively wrapping around her neck. Suddenly, Hoài eyes burned with tears. Evening slowly settled in, wrapping the wooden garden house in a gentle, peaceful golden light. The lamps were turned on just enough, not too bright, not too dim, revealing the wood grain that had darkened with time. Outside, a soft breeze stirred the old trees, leaves brushing against one another with a faint rustling sound, carrying the scent of damp earth after a sunny day and the familiar smell of wood that filled the air. Everything blended together, creating a sense of calm that felt real and deeply human. The three of them sat around the small wooden table. It was not wide, but just enough for them to sit close together. The distance between them was so small that even the slightest movement could bring them into contact, as if their closeness had long since become something natural, unnoticed. Hoài placed Tony in the middle. She adjusted his posture carefully, one arm gently around his back while the other held a spoon, patiently feeding him small bites one by one. Every movement was slow and attentive, as though she did not want to miss a single moment. Tony did not speak, nor did he demand anything. He simply smiled, his eyes curving softly, and from time to time reached out to touch Hung's hand resting on the table. The touch was light and brief, yet repeated many times, as if it were his own way of making sure that the man was still there, still sitting beside him. Hung noticed, but he did not pull his hand away. He left it there, allowing Tony to touch it freely, to feel his presence. His gaze occasionally rested on the mother and child, quiet and warm. He did not speak much, only remained there, as he always did. The meal passed in silence. There was no lively conversation, no need for long stories. Only the soft clink of the spoon against the bowl, the sound of wind in the garden, and the steady breathing of three people sitting together. Hoài spoke softly. Her voice slowed, lower than usual, as if she were speaking more to herself than to anyone else. 3 years already. She paused, her eyes resting on the wooden table in front of her. I never thought I could come this far. The words needed no further explanation. They carried with them a long journey of exhaustion, worries, sleepless nights, and moments when she thought she would have to face everything alone. Hoài looked up at Hùng. There was no longer any guard in her eyes, only a quiet, deep, and genuine gratitude. Thank you, for coming into my life, for staying. She paused, then continued, her voice trembling slightly. And for loving Tony, as if he were your own son. The room seemed to sink into silence at that moment. Hùng did not answer right away. He looked at Tony first, then at Hoài. His hand rested on Tony's hand, steady and gentle. Then he reached out with his other hand and took Hoài'. The grip was not tight, but it was warm and certain. I've never seen that as something extraordinary, he said calmly, his voice low and even. Family is choosing one another every day. The words were simple, without embellishment, yet they carried their own weight. Hoài lowered her head, her lips pressing together softly. She said nothing more, only squeezed his hand gently, a quiet reply of her own. Tony watched them. His eyes moved from his mother to Hùng, then down to their hands held together. Suddenly, Tony clapped his hands. The sound was uneven and soft, but filled with excitement. His small hands met, creating a gentle noise that broke the stillness surrounding them. Both Hùng and Hoài laughed. It was a light laugh, not loud, but enough to make the room feel warmer. Tony laughed too, not fully understanding, but sensing the joy spreading around him. In that moment, Hoài turned away. She raised her hand and quietly wiped away her tears, trying to keep her breathing steady. The golden light reflected in the corners of her still damp eyes, and outside, the wind continued to move softly, as if everything was flowing on, gentle and slow. Evening slowly settled in, wrapping the wooden garden house in a gentle, peaceful golden light. The lamps were turned on just enough, not too bright, not too dim, revealing the wood grain that had darkened with time. Outside, a soft breeze stirred the old trees, leaves brushing against one another with a faint rustling sound, carrying the scent of damp earth after a sunny day and the familiar smell of wood that filled the air. Everything blended together, creating a sense of calm that felt real and deeply human. The three of them sat around the small wooden table. It was not wide, but just enough for them to sit close together. The distance between them was so small that even the slightest movement could bring them into contact, as if their closeness had long since become something natural, unnoticed. Hoài placed Tony in the middle. She adjusted his posture carefully, one arm gently around his back while the other held a spoon, patiently feeding him small bites one by one. Every movement was slow and attentive, as though she did not want to miss a single moment. Tony did not speak, nor did he demand anything. He simply smiled, his eyes curving softly, and from time to time reached out to touch Hung's hand resting on the table. The touch was light and brief, yet repeated many times, as if it were his own way of making sure that the man was still there, still sitting beside him. Hung noticed, but he did not pull his hand away. He left it there, allowing Tony to touch it freely, to feel his presence. His gaze occasionally rested on the mother and child, quiet and warm. He did not speak much, only remained there, as he always did. The meal passed in silence. There was no lively conversation, no need for long stories. Only the soft clink of the spoon against the bowl, the sound of wind in the garden, and the steady breathing of three people sitting together. Hoài spoke softly. Her voice slowed, lower than usual, as if she were speaking more to herself than to anyone else. 3 years already. She paused, her eyes resting on the wooden table in front of her. I never thought I could come this far. The words needed no further explanation. They carried with them a long journey of exhaustion, worries, sleepless nights, and moments when she thought she would have to face everything alone. Hoài looked up at Hùng. There was no longer any guard in her eyes, only a quiet, deep, and genuine gratitude. Thank you, for coming into my life, for staying. She paused, then continued, her voice trembling slightly. And for loving Tony, as if he were your own son. The room seemed to sink into silence at that moment. Hùng did not answer right away. He looked at Tony first, then at Hoài. His hand rested on Tony's hand, steady and gentle. Then he reached out with his other hand and took Hoài'. The grip was not tight, but it was warm and certain. I've never seen that as something extraordinary, he said calmly, his voice low and even. Family is choosing one another every day. The words were simple, without embellishment, yet they carried their own weight. Hoài lowered her head, her lips pressing together softly. She said nothing more, only squeezed his hand gently, a quiet reply of her own. Tony watched them. His eyes moved from his mother to Hùng, then down to their hands held together. Suddenly, Tony clapped his hands. The sound was uneven and soft, but filled with excitement. His small hands met, creating a gentle noise that broke the stillness surrounding them. Both Hùng and Hoài laughed. It was a light laugh, not loud, but enough to make the room feel warmer. Tony laughed too, not fully understanding, but sensing the joy spreading around him. In that moment, Hoài turned away. She raised her hand and quietly wiped away her tears, trying to keep her breathing steady. The golden light reflected in the corners of her still damp eyes, and outside, the wind continued to move softly, as if everything was flowing on, gentle and slow. As dinner slowly came to an end, the wooden garden house grew quieter. The bowls and plates were neatly set aside, yet the warmth of the family meal still lingered in the air. Soft yellow light fell over the wooden table, making everything feel gentler, slower, as if time itself did not wish to rush past this moment. Hùng stood up and walked toward a small wooden cabinet placed against the wall. His movements were unhurried, without any obvious attempt to create surprise. He took out a small gift, simply and neatly wrapped. When he turned back, his eyes briefly met Hoài', then settled on Tony, sleeping peacefully in his arms. Hùng placed the gift on the table and gently slid it toward Hoài'. It was a wooden clock. Not large, not ornate, with a warm, deep wood tone. Its surface was smoothly polished, the design simple yet refined. On the clock face, a line was carefully engraved, clear and steady. Home is where the three of us are together. Hoài' looked at it intently. Her gaze rested on each word for a long time, as if she were reading them again and again, slowly and carefully. Her chest tightened slightly, not from an overwhelming rush of emotion, but from the feeling of being fully understood. No explanation was needed, no further words required. That single line spoke for everything Hùng had quietly done over the past 3 years. She reached out and touched the clock, her fingertips brushing lightly over the smooth wooden surface. Then Hoài' held Hung's hand. The grip was not strong, but it lasted long enough for him to feel the gratitude and appreciation within it. Hùng did not pull his hand away, allowing the moment to linger just a little longer. Tony continued to sleep soundly in his father's arms. His head rested against Hung's chest, his breathing steady and calm. His small face looked peaceful, completely unaware that he was the center of all the love in this house. Hung subtly adjusted his posture, holding him a little more securely, a natural reflex of someone accustomed to protecting. Outside, the garden was still. The trees stood motionless, the rustling leaves now silent. The world seemed to pause, leaving only the warm yellow light spilling from the wooden house, steady and comforting against the quiet darkness. Inside, a small family was growing day by day, not loudly, not with grand gestures, but slowly, firmly, and with deep affection. Here, one could see not only the love between a husband and wife, but also feel the true bond of a real family. A family built from the choice to stay, from quiet actions, and from a man willing to love his wife's child as his own, without titles, without proof, only with sincerity. And as this story comes to a close, what remains is not grand promises, but a very real sense of warmth. Thank you for watching this story. If you felt the love in these small moments, please subscribe to the channel and continue this journey with us in the videos to come.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình nha. Bây giờ thì mình đang làm gì ta, tự nhiên mình quên mất là mình đang làm cái gì luôn ạ. Mình gửi cái ảnh để chỉnh sửa làm thumbnail. Thì hôm nay là mình viết cho Hoài ca với lại Hùng kỷ niệm 1 năm ngày cưới. Mình thấy rất là ưng ý. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều. Tự nhiên tạo được cái ảnh ưng ý cũng vui hẳn luôn. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau nhé.